Professionals who enter people's homes, like plumbers, electricians, cleaners, what is something the condition of a house tells you about the owner that they don't realize they are revealing? So, I used to sell floors and had to do in-home appointments. I have seen some of the worst when it comes to messy. The one that did it for me was when I went to an appointment for Jessica. I knock, and an 8-year-old boy opens with 2 malnourished dogs coming to sniff my shoes. I look around and there is trash and feces everywhere, and the smell was unbearable. I ask the boy where his mom, Jessica, is, and he says, "My mom is in the mental hospital." And I said, "Okay, where is your dad?" And he says, "I don't know, he hasn't been here in days." Then the 8-year-old boy goes to show me this gigantic hole in the floor. It was in fact the little kid who booked the appointment in his mom's name. I told him, "Let me call my team to make sure I pick the right floor for this." So I stepped out, called my manager, and told them about the situation, and I immediately called the police for a welfare check. That was my last week as an in-home flooring salesperson, and I hope he is in a much better position now. Next story. When I was a medical student, we had to do home visits to patients who lived in the area assigned to our clinic. In Brazil, we have a public health program called Saúde de Família, family health program, where community health workers regularly visit every household in the neighborhood to check basic living conditions. Clean water, sewage, sanitation, make sure patients are taking their medications, and understand why they might be missing routine medical appointments. As students, we had to accompany them to experience firsthand just how our health system actually works. One day, we entered the house of a bedridden older man. The door was opened by a woman in her early 20s. We asked where he was, and she calmly said he had gone out. While the community health worker started looking around the house for him, I stayed talking to the young woman. The house was filthy. There was food containers and leftovers scattered everywhere, rats and dirt. The smell was a mix of sour, rotten, and dampness. The health worker eventually found the man chained in a dark back room, with no light, lying on a mattress completely soiled with feces and urine. Although he was bedridden, he was fully conscious. He told us she had locked him there because he had used more than 2 diapers in one day, and that he had been kept like that for at least 10 days. We immediately called the police, social services, and an ambulance. I know he stayed in the hospital for around 20 days to treat all of his ulcers, and the young woman was arrested. But I can just still remember the smell and the conditions he was living in. I've never forgotten that. Next story. I am a cleaner, but most of the houses I clean are already fairly clean. I can definitely infer things about how lived in the house is, though. I can tell the people whose family life is very important and have a lot of fun with their kids because their houses have messes in places, crayon drawings, projects, photos up a lot, and travel books or summer camp brochures. Other people might not have kids, but have lots of pets or cooking messes, artwork on the walls. I can tell these people are homebodies sometimes, but they try and live life to the fullest. For some people, the vibe is colder. Less clutter or mess everything in its places, less cooking oil and spices spilled on the stove, the furniture in the living room is less indented or disturbed. Cleaned a house once where it looked like the husband and wife lived on opposite sides of the upstairs and hardly interacted. Next story. My dad did home renovations and repairs during the winter time. He has his top 3 awful homes, the worst being the piss house. He was called out for a bid on an all-new flooring. When he pulled up, the smell hit him from the outside. He broke off 2 cigarette butt filters and shoved them up his nose and put on an N95 mask and stepped in. First thing that happened was the squishy carpets. Every surface of the carpet was soaked down to the subfloor in animal urine. It ate all the way down through the subflooring. Then the original hardwood floors were covered in black splotches of urine-soaked areas. The house was lined with walkways shuffled and made through piles of piss-filled boxes and trash. There were so many cats and dogs running around with crap-covered paws too. The cockroaches were so bad that they were visible in broad daylight. Needless to say, he called animal control and turned down the job. Next story. Plumber here. Everything. If you just listen, they will tell you everything. You just look at a mess, and they will tell you exactly who, what, when, where, and how of it. 50% of it is lies because they can't face themselves, but their posture gives that away. And I used to judge. Now, I just want to hug most people. Life is tough, and they are doing what they can to survive. Yes, sometimes they may become drug addicts, what we consider waste cases, So many hoarders, too. There is a collective grief that it seems everyone is holding right now. A long time for being allowed to put the fakeness down and just be accepted for who they are, mess and all, to be real. Everyone puts this world up on social media and won't allow anyone to come over for fear of breaking that image. I've seen cold as ice, spotless homes where working for days, and you never hear the husband and wife talk to each other. Other times, they try to drop all of their world's problems on you. It's not so much looking for conditions of their house to pick up clues, you just need to stop talking and listening, and most people never stop revealing. It's like they were holding a breath just waiting to be released. So everyone, I remember from the first episode of Mad Men, Don Draper said, "When a man walks into a room, he brings his whole life with him. And if you listen, he'll tell you how he got there." And I think that's a very apt quote here. It just felt relevant to me. Also, I was thinking about John Hamm and Don Draper today at the gym. I don't know why. Don't judge me. Anyway, next story. So, I used to paint home interiors. 40 years of being in other people's homes. One customer was the retired municipal court judge. His house was neat as a pin, almost minimalist and tasteful. Well, he wanted to have his basement epoxied. I told him it would take 2 days. I'd move everything to one side of the basement and paint half. Then the next day I would move everything to the other side and paint the cleared side. Then he gave me kind of a funny look and said, "Let's go down to the basement and you can measure." Cool. We go down there, and besides the furnace, the only other thing down there was a fold-up ping pong table. The place was immaculate. You could eat off of the concrete floor. I have never seen anything like it. That's almost 40 years ago, and it still amazes me. My basement is full of stuff, old furniture, Christmas decorations, tools, you name it, it's down there. So we folded up the ping pong table and slid it into its niche, and everything was good to go. Nothing even to sweep. The judge, though, ended up being a great client and a very sweet guy. He was very good to me over the years. Most organized man I ever knew. And it turns out he went to Annapolis and was a naval officer in World War II. I wonder if that's where he got it or if it just came naturally. Probably a little bit of both. Next story. Corporate banking by day, professional organizer on the side. My ex-husband was a legitimate hoarder, and even when it came time to sell the house as a part of the divorce, he barely lifted a finger to help purge, declutter the marital home. The outcome? I was forced to clear out the entire house. I couldn't afford to hire professional help either, so the effort fell entirely on my shoulders. There was stuff piled floor to ceiling in every nook and cranny of our now former 4,000 plus square foot home. Harrowing as the experience was, it was also inspiring. And so, I launched my own small business, doing home organizing and decluttering. And generally speaking, people with tremendous clutter tend to suffer with mental health issues, especially ADHD. Their inability/unwillingness to part with stuff, it breaks my heart. Not only does it pose challenges during the decluttering journey, but my heart also breaks for them, because the clutter takes up extra space in their brain too, and therefore causes extra stress in their lives. Next story. I had a job that required me to enter homes to measure windows. Many were messy, cluttered, and/or dirty. One in particular was all three and had more dogs and cats than I could count. Ironically, the owner asked if I minded taking off my shoes, which I usually did, but this time I did so with a great deal of reluctance. Sure enough, my very first step was into a puddle of urine. Not sure if it was from a dog or a child or a cat, but definitely urine. Started taking those little shoe covers with me everywhere I went after that. Next story. I do first calls multiple times a night for work, which is removal of human remains from a residence. I can tell it's going to be a crap show if the cops leave when I show up. One huge sign is an overflowing ashtray on the front porch, any lawn ornaments with that crappy LED lighting, or any religious or political signage. Next story. Paramedic here. The people who have houses full of cheap, coordinated, meaningless decor are always a-holes. Giant, boring abstract paintings or photos, a decorative bowl full of wicker balls, wooden signs with stupid phrases in cursive, everything in beige, neutrals, gray. Those houses always lack soul. They have too few pictures of loved ones, too few decor pieces that someone chose because it's cool and they actually like it. It's all just disposable, trendy garbage. It's a mirror to their soul. Next story. I used to work for a high-end audio-video installer. We went out to do service work on some in-ceiling speakers. When we went in, the owner took us to a large living room in the back, waited for us to stack up, then said, "When I open this door, we need to enter as quickly as possible and then shut the door again." A little weird, but after entering the room, everything seemed normal, until I saw the gold medals on the wall, and Mo Farah explained that the room was set to the oxygen level of 10K feet so he could train. Opening the door lowered that very quickly. You know, just Olympic athlete things. Next story. Not a direct answer, but an anecdote. I am a carpenter and mostly specialized in remodeling people's homes. Years ago, I was in a home doing some work on a new master bed and bath setup on the second floor. While coming down the hallway, full of natural light, a picture on the wall caught my eye. I was viewing it from the side angle, so I couldn't see the picture directly as the light glanced off of it, like I was viewing it from a very flat angle, but I could see it was very geometric. Lots of straight, intersecting lines. And I thought, oh cool, I wonder if it's an aerial view of the city or something. And as I got in front of it and viewed it straight on, no, it was their wedding photo. I stepped to the side again and glanced across the flat plane of the glass again. Lots of lines. That's when I realized they were using their wedding photo to cut up lines of coke, and what I was seeing was the residue from that. Okay, everybody, we already know that couples that snort together stay together. It's like recreating the scene with Lady and the Tramp, but instead of a noodle, it's a line of coke, and they meet in the middle. They go, and then they kiss and make love, and sparks and powder fly everywhere, and they're hyper energetic, and then they crash after an hour, because that's what coke does to you. Don't do coke. Anyway, next story. So I've been home remodeling for about 10 years now, and in that time, I've seen so much. From a professional point of view, poorly maintained homes tell me I'm going to have to upcharge for certain things because if the inside of the home looks this bad, God knows what's going on under the hood. Also, despite a dirty and neglected home, these people tend to be more likely to want the work done, but they're also unlikely to pass a credit check. Just seems to work out like this quite often. Then, from a personal point of view, a home's cleanliness and maintenance is often a reflection of the person or persons living there. People with clean and maintained homes tend to have this mirrored in their personality, while very messy and neglected homes tend to be a mirror into the person or persons you're speaking to. It's honestly quite sad because when you're inside someone's home for 2 to 5 hours, you're inevitably going to have moments of getting to know one another, and you'd be stunned by how many of those folks treat you like a therapist because they have years of being pent up with no one to speak to. And you showing even the tiniest sliver of interest causes them to open the floodgates. Next story. This one family had a lot of random generic nature canvases around the place. There were only a couple of family photos. It just felt like a doctor's office. While repairing, though, you could hear a pin drop in the home. Maybe some occasional laughing and conversation, but I felt that their interior decor illustrated a family with no connection nor many hobbies to get by. Almost like a hollow family, if that makes sense. Next story. I will never eat a work potluck or someone else's food that I don't know very, very well. I can't tell you how many times I've gone into $1 million home that's absolutely disgusting. Well-dressed people with good jobs that have piles of dog crap in the house or reeks of piss so strongly you want to cover your nose. Piles of disgusting dishes all over the kitchen, floors never swept. It's not just people in trailers. There are some really filthy, dirty people of means. You're never sure who the gross ones are. Next story. I used to have my own on-site computer repair business. I will never start it back up. There was one house I went into, and no crap, it was so full of beer cans, you had to wad through it, literally up to your knees. Another house, I could smell the cat piss from outside, and the guy was covered in boils and sores that a lot of them were infected, and he had an affinity to freaking touching me. Thank you for coming, handshake. Want something to drink? Pat on the shoulder. I was expecting him to say thank you and rub my face. After the third or fourth time of him touching me, I just told him that I am autistic and I don't like when people touch me, which isn't a lie, but I try to be all right with it to be kind. Then he did it again, so I told him that I would be unable to work on his computer there and would have to take it to my shop. Had to go back in to reinstall it, but that was like run across his house, get it all hooked up and run out. Told my business partner that he is on the deny list after all of that. After a bunch of crap like that though, I've now become a germaphobe and OCD with cleaning. Next story. I insulate houses, so I go into places like crawl spaces, knee walls, attics, and other places that most people never see in their own homes. Sometimes these are the cleanest areas in the house. Side note, you are surrounded by spiders. Seriously, there's probably like 10 of them within 3 feet of you right now. Alright, so I don't know if you guys heard that upwards inflection right at the end of the story, but that was me fidgeting and like freaking out right at that moment. I don't think I've ever read a story that just ruined my day as fast as that. I'm in a recording booth right now, but I hope there's no spiders around me. Why would OP say this? My day is ruined now. Next story. So, I do home repair, and I'm often surprised that intelligent, professional people don't have the foresight to do seemingly obvious things to prepare for my visit. If I'm doing something that involves working under the kitchen sink, clear it out before I get there. The people who do think of this usually always have minimal things under there and it's pretty clean. But the people who don't do it often have an insane amount of stuff shoved under there with at least 2 liquids that have spilled and a years-old collection of plastic shopping bags. By the time I pulled everything out, there was no room for me or my tools. Then, if I'm going to recaulk your bathtub, again, consider clearing out all of the soaps and products and especially that clump of hair you pulled off the drain and flicked into the corner. I've seen that several times, and removed it myself. Then, I can't install a window treatment when there's a home entertainment center sitting in front of it. Also, if you ask me to take off my shoes, I better not leave your house with chunks of food squished into my socks. I actually carry house shoes with me now because of this. Then, if you live in a place that has winter, think about the door weatherization project before it's below freezing outside. Then, if you live on a street with a really challenging parking situation and you have a driveway, move your car ahead of time so I can park there. And I realize now that I've digressed from OP's actual question, but I've written too much to just delete it. Had to get it off my chest. Next story. I pet sit. One of the joys of that is getting to see how people live. I sleep in their beds and use their fridges. Luckily, I only ended up having one really bad house. I cleaned it when I first arrived, then again when I left. The rest are just normal dirty. Most people, though, do not wipe out their fridge. They rarely clean behind the faucet in the sink, and almost never do they clean under the toilet seat. I've even had people not put out clean sheets for me. On average, most people are not as clean as they claim. Next story. When the house is spotless except for one chaotic room, it usually means the person is holding everything together on the outside but is overwhelmed on the inside. You can read people's stress levels by the corners they stop caring about. Next story. I went to a house a few weeks ago to replace some drain lines under a sink. I opened the cabinet and about 100 roaches came crawling out. I immediately get up and I say I can't do the work until they take care of that roach problem. They didn't understand why having roaches under your bathroom sink was a problem and genuinely seemed like they didn't know what to do about it. Next story. A good friend of mine is a plumber and he came over to help me install a new kitchen faucet not long ago, and he asked me if I had ever been in one of my neighbor's homes. We live in a townhouse community, and I said no. Why? And he said he went there to install 3 faucets for him, and his wife and he, the plumber, said it was the worst living conditions he'd seen in a long time. He said the carpeting had huge holes in them as though they had just cut it instead of cleaning it. The kitchen sink had a bucket in it because the pipes below were broken. They were using the bucket to catch water, then dumping it out back. He also said paint was peeling off the walls and it just smelled. And I was shocked because the wife is always prim and proper and he heads up our landscaping and is OCD about the flower beds. And I apologized for my mess. I had Halloween decorations in boxes that had to be moved to the garage and thought that was a mess. Next story. I was a plumbing inspector for over 10 years. Had to go into thousands of homes and businesses. For the most part, nothing really stood out to me. Sure, there were homes that were gross and some were falling apart, but there was this one though. So before I even get to the door, the smell of cat piss was enough to gag a bug. The lady came to the door and was friendly and not ashamed in the slightest. It was just another day for her. She walked me through her living room and down the hallway. The path was barely wide enough to shuffle through with piles of crap and newspaper almost chest high. When I got to the basement to look at her water heater, there was an actual river of cat piss flowing to her floor drain, and I saw no less than 30 cats in the few seconds I was there. I had to hold my breath most of the time. I was in there to the point of almost passing out, eyes constantly watering. We did have sex, though. What? Excuse me, what? First off, shout out to cat piss showing up 5 different times, but what? What? Next story. Paramedic here. The casual filth is always present. Probably 4 out of 5 houses I go into are gross to super gross. I recently went into a penguin house. Older couple, house was pristine, like a museum with a cleaning crew. And there were penguins every effing where. Not live birds. Hundreds and hundreds of little statues, paintings, life-size statues, Lego penguins, photos, human-sized statues of penguins. I'd bet that they'd probably have 95+% of all available penguin art represented in their home. It was one of those patient interactions where I was legitimately distracted by the things around me, and I had to actively ignore the effing penguins and focus on the human with the medical problem. Anyway, one of these 65-ish-year-old people has the autism, like me, and they don't know it. Next story. I used to be a cable guy. There are a ton of incidents where things were not okay in the home. A lot of people were dirty and messy, but they were fine people. There were a lot of people who were just plain weird, but they weren't doing anyone any harm. Every now and then, I'd come across a red flag situation that needed attention from someone with authority. Sometimes, though, it was kind of a gray area where you really don't know what to do. There was a kid I met one time while working a job at an apartment complex. He answered the door. He was maybe 7 or 8 years old. Mom was running around looking like she was getting ready to leave. I was installing the free internet box for low-income housing. There was no furniture anywhere other than a mattress in the living room next to a couch. The TV was on the floor. The kid was watching TV while I worked on the install. Then I'm in the bedroom when there's nothing but dirty clothes on the floor and random boxes filled with stuff. That's where the cable line fed in for the internet, so my work was there. And I heard the mom say something to the kid, and then the front door opened and closed. Mom was gone. I finished up and asked the kid where his mom went, and he said she went to the store. And this wasn't the first time I was left babysitting someone's kids, but this was the youngest kid I was left with. He was just dead focused on the TV. I called Mom a few times and left her some messages. She wouldn't answer. I stuck around for a couple of hours hoping she would show up before I had to call the police, and the kid showed me all his toys while we waited, and Mom never showed up. By the time the police came, it was already dark outside. I never was updated on what happened with the kid, if they found the mom or if she came home. I don't know if the kid was taken into someone else's care, but that was the only time I had to call the police for a situation like that. The parents, as irresponsible as they were, usually did come home. Next story. House cleaner for 20 years. I live in a kind of quirky city where everyone decorates their house to their personality, and it makes me love all of them, even if I've never met them. Some have money to put into art, cool furniture, but many are just collecting decorations from friends and local makers, thrift and hand-me-down furniture, etc. People's mismatched styles give you a view into their unique selves. Most everyone displays books and music collections that give you a view into their personalities as well. In contrast, I used to also run a division of the cleaning company in a wealthy military area, and the houses were usually professionally decorated or were big houses with mostly bare walls. I hate those houses. They are so dull, and I find their inhabitants unrelatable. They put a lot of money into their space, but no personality. Next story. I have seen a lot of crap as a property manager. One guy in particular at an apartment complex really blew my mind. I go there with the trash crew to clean out a unit that's literally overflowing with garbage. You can see boxes and piles of crap in the windows. The neighbors complained about the smell through the shared wall and vestibule. He meets me at the front walk getting into his car. It's a newer Mercedes, spotless inside and out. He is wearing a nice sports coat, white pressed shirt, and ironed slacks. Hair styled nicely and clean-shaven face. And I'm thinking, there's no way this guy lives here. Yup, it's his place. He apologized for having us to come here again, and he's trying to get help, he says. Tells us to throw away everything in the unit so he can start over. He drives off to work, leaving us to go to work on his place without any other instructions. I have a work order that says the same thing. Per request of tenant, remove everything from this unit. So I spent 8 hours working with the crew because I was just invested in the situation. Despite how disgusting it was, it's a 2-story, totals maybe 800 square feet place. I'll go room by room and I'll describe the scene. The kitchen. The sink is full of eggshells and some other mystery substance. There's 15 Walmart griddles, used and dirty, piled in the corner. Used paper plates and plastic silverware piled high on the counters. One griddle still warm from that morning. Egg residue smoldering. 2 new griddles boxed leaning against the cabinet. Box of fancy plastic forks and paper plates in the cupboard. In the middle of the dining area on a nightstand thing, a Keurig machine. Industrial-sized box of K-cups. 2 cases of water bottles. On the floor behind it, hundreds of discarded K-cups and empty water bottles. And I think the amount of coffee grounds here really masked the smell of the place. Onto the living room, single lazy boy chair. Older style TV on a wooden crate, no other furniture. Next to the chair is a pile of empty pre-cooked chicken bags and frozen dinner trays. The boxes from the frozen dinners neatly stacked against the back wall, 6 feet high, 3 rows wide, with them a stack of newspapers twice as big. I assume that stuff was recyclable, though he obviously never took it out. Then upstairs there's one big bedroom and a bathroom. But the bathroom is spotless. I mean, shining like brand new. Grooming tools, soaps, towels, cologne, everything is in order. Explains his appearance, and I asked myself where all the trash from this room went. And I opened the closet, about to get killed by the avalanche. There's a big can, but it's overflowing with used razors, toilet paper rolls, toothpaste tubes, toothbrushes, empty bottles of other products. no washing machine. The complex doesn't offer shared laundry facilities, so the unit is supposed to have it in the bathroom closet. It's gone. Then head to the bedroom. In the closet, neatly hung, are a dozen of the same outfit I saw him in that morning. Explains why they look so sharp. They're brand new. New socks and underwear packaged on the shelf. On the floor between the bed and the wall is a mountain of dirty towels and clothes. We put it all in bags and tossed it out the second-story window, along with the double mattress, no bed frame, that had no sheets and was stained all over. This guy had some serious disorder. He didn't reuse anything, just tossed it after its lifespan was done. According to the neighbors, he's really nice, has a lucrative finance job or something in town. He can afford to just buy new stuff every week and then throw it away. And it's not high-end stuff by any means, but wow, this was 10 years or so ago now, and the apartment was probably $1,200 per month, everything included. He obviously cared enough about what people think about him in the outside world, nice car and clean look, but his house was a literal nightmare. I lost that complex from my roster not long after because it was bought up by a bigger real estate company and didn't want to pay for a manager, so I don't know whatever happened to that guy, but best of luck to him. Next story. Going into a home and the husband and wife both sit at the table together having the most terribly performed fake conversation to convince the complete stranger, me, that they have a normal, happy life. And I'm usually nearby working, so I get to take part in this charade. I love leaving places like that. Then another is when the housewife, the men just blatantly stare at me while I work, pretends to be doing housework 5 feet away from me just so she can watch me work. Bernice, I've watched you sweep that spot 19 times already. Quit effing around and just make small talk with me. Alright, so that husband and wife making a fake conversation, that's kind of scary and creepy in a certain context. Hello, Reginald, how are you today? Oh, I'm doing great, honey. That's like some skinwalker type stuff. They're gonna take off their faces in a couple of minutes. That's kind of horrifying in a certain context. Anyway, next story. Entered a $2 million McMansion. Woman explains how she overordered her tile, picked out the shade she wanted, and returned the rest. Red flag number 1. She chucked about it. Red flag number 2. Took a little in the attic above it, and the attic was covered with mold. Her $150,000 bathroom was vented directly into the attic. I explained the situation and how I wasn't even qualified to use the word mold since I wasn't licensed for it. As I packed up, her conversation used we and us a lot. She thought I was going to hold her hand for mold remediation. I sent her a $75 bill, she refused to pay it, and oddly, she kept contacting me for the pictures on my phone. Yeah, the disrespect she showed the tile contractors was pretty much who she was. Next story. Former pest control tech here, worked out of Las Vegas for about 7 years before switching to the trades. Back in 2013, on my birthday, we used to pick up calls throughout the day, but in this day it was summertime, the day was long, and I was tired and wanted to celebrate my birthday. And right as I was wrapping up my last call of the day, a call came in. A lady had bed bugs and wanted me to come and look. I wish I had told them to hell no and went home instead. When I arrived, I was blown away. There were bed bugs crawling on the sofa in broad daylight. This was a bad infestation. They were everywhere. Her son was a grown man sleeping on the couch in his underwear. As I stepped inside, the smell of dirt and BO and nasty was so pungent my clothes smelled like it when I left. I also could smell the crystal meth. I was familiar with the smell, though I never did it myself. It was a thick, heavy smell throughout the house. The kicker was when I turned the corner and saw her young daughter and son, possibly her grandchildren. I never found out, they might have belonged to the underwear boy, but they were probably 4 and 7 years old. They were both naked. They looked malnourished, but they were both so sweet. So combined with low pay and after 7 years as a bug guy, I didn't have much longer. Crap like that just sticks to you. I was traumatized by it. I left the industry a month later. I have tons of stories like this, both good and bad, but this one stands out to me. I was an apprentice in the IBEW within 2 months of this. When I got back to the office, I told my manager about it, and he called CPS on her. Next story. Okay, this is more of a story time, but tangentially relevant to the asked question. Our family runs a facility management business with about 150 properties currently in our care. For some clients, we also take care of their appointments, estates, tenants. You really learn a lot about people when working in this field, and sometimes you learn more than you need to learn. There are also some stereotypes you learn about/start creating that you did not know even existed. So far, the most revealing have been the homes of wealthy and/or disabled, urgent care people. I put it in quotation marks because usually their homes have relatively unique quirks. Both usually deal with extreme circumstances, and their homes reveal how they cope with them. But the worst homes are of nepo babies, or women that married into wealth. Often both groups behave the same way. They do not acknowledge you as an equal and kind of look down on you, but at the same time develop an unhealthy codependency. Usually, you won't be the only person they are dependent on. It might not be consciously done, but it is effed up regardless. I try not to be judgmental, but both these groups tend to be bordering on some sort of psychopathy. It is unbelievable. The worst combination is nepo baby plus divorced mother married into wealth. Their homes are usually really messy, really fast, extreme mood swings. There is no effort to kind of keep up any sort of appearances. A lot of takeout, parcels, often unopened, never know where their things are, will demand you organize and order their stuff, but they're the first ones to break the order. They are always stressed, and that's why they need so much help around the house, but will be constantly at home doing nothing whenever we are there. They will also expect you to enable their parasitic behavior. They make no effort of keeping up appearances. One lady expected us to change her bed sheets while her vibrator was on the bed, used the night before and basically left that way on the bed. The worst one was a call from a client's son to one of our female members of the team. He apparently forgot to close the window in his bedroom while starting his travel the world sabbatical. He never worked a day in his life. And we also had a key to his apartment. It was a general key, and she went to do what she was asked of. When she opened the apartment door, she thought she was inside of a sex fetish club. No furniture, poor lighting, more like an ambient lighting than a functional one, different types and sizes of sex toys on one side of the corridor, leather and latex boots hanging from the other. In his bedroom, the same thing. No furniture, just a gynecology chair next to the bed. The other room was also overtly sexual, but less in a bondage type way. Love seat, big-ass TV, and another bed. And she was confused if she might have been in the wrong apartment, because we have a general key, so any door in this building can be opened. I went up, and sure enough, it was the right door. We closed the window, and we went out of there. She was shocked because she was always so nice and charming, and she really felt like he did not look down on you like the usual nepo babies, but the dude always gave me the creeps. And to this day, I think it was not a coincidence he asked our female colleague to close the window. He has a certain type, and she matches it. Innocent-looking, naive, natural plain Jane vibes. I mean, even if it was a coincidence, how effing inappropriate is it to send someone to an apartment that's been remodeled solely for sexual purposes? Next story. I've worked multiple service jobs where I was required to enter homes. I quickly learned that there is a difference between a messy lived-in house and a nasty, filthy house of squalor. Normally, the smell is the first thing I noticed. In a few extreme situations, I could smell the funk before opening the door. And lots of people have clutter, kids' stuff, dishes piled up, and a few piles of dirty laundry laying around. That is a messy house. Nasty houses have carpet hardened from uncleaned spills, pet urine, and feces, rancid food left out in every room, trash overflowing, mountains of laundry everywhere, and every surface in the kitchen is covered in some combination of grease, slime, or hardened organic matter. Bathrooms, they would be covered in mold, mildew, hair, toothpaste, and so much buildup on the mirror that you can hardly see your own reflection. And seeing kids living in that kind of filth was always disheartening, and it was always the worst part of entering those homes. Also, hoarding is probably way more common than you think. Lots of hoarders' houses of varying degrees out there. Next story. I worked at a very rural school district. 60 kids. Come Christmas one year, instead of dressing like Santa to bring gifts, we bought some trees to give to the most deserving of families who couldn't get one for themselves. The family that lived the farthest away was very shy but trusted me to come inside, and inside brought me to tears. My students lived in abject poverty. No cleanliness anywhere, mold and poo. They trusted me not to call CPS, but I had a duty as a school employee to report them to at least my boss, the superintendent. Maybe we should have organized to help clean up. If I recall correctly, CPS came and had repeated visits, but the kids stayed home. Next story. In my previous career, I was a registered nurse and worked home care for about a year. The stories I could tell. The one that sticks out to me was a very sick lady on hemodialysis who lived in a motel, and it was the very definition of a roach motel. I live in the Midwest, and it gets extremely cold in the winter, so for a good part of the year, I don't see bugs. But this lady's room, there were cockroaches crawling up and down the wall and along the trim. I felt so gross and paranoid for days. maybe even weeks after that. Next story. When I sold vacuums door to door, I know I felt like a piece of crap the whole time, I had some, let's say, wonderful houses. One was a crack den. Learned what crack smelled like. Got freaked out by the extremely animated and peppy owner who kept threatening us if we effed up his floor, but in the cheesiest voice with a huge smile. Also watched 14-ish-year-old kids cradling their crack rocks and going to smoke them. Then had one house with an extremely mentally ill lady. Apparently she worked with CSIS and the CIA to stop 2 terrorist bombings, one in Seattle and one in Vancouver. But she lived in the ghetto of Abbotsford. She was also cousins with Elijah Wood. She had a huge red splatter on her wall bare the floor, and I asked what it was from, and all she said was, "Oh yeah, we had to put down our cat." What? How the F did you do that to have a huge red blood splatter on the wall? Then also had one house where the lady was not mentally well. Rats running through cupboards, and the place was so gross that when I turned on the vacuum, the dust rage would explode off. My nose started bleeding just from being in the house. What a wild job that was. Next story. Boy, oh boy, I used to work for a very large cable company as a residential tech, and this was actually a big deal. Thousands of homes that I went into in multiple areas across multiple socioeconomic demographics. And there's a few things I came out of it with. First off, as a white guy, I've never met anyone more filthy in general than poor whites. Many of them don't just live like trash, they live literally in trash. Off-grade homes with garbage literally piled up underneath the house until it's hitting the underside of the floor. Carpet stale and crusty with cat piss, and, in some cases, just outright pools of rotting food on the ground. I even had to get CPS involved a few times because of small children having to live in pools of outright filth. The structural conditions of someone's home didn't necessarily say much about them, but their cleanliness did. Filthy people weren't necessarily nastier in personality, but they were certainly more ignorant, far less educated, and generally incredibly entitled, and just out of touch with reality. Some of them were stupid enough to actually expect us to crawl through sewage. Fortunately, we weren't McDonald's employees, so there was no way in hell any of us would have been compelled into doing something like that. Next story. First job out of college was knocking on doors for nonprofits. One house I knocked on ready to do my speech and was met by an incredibly sad woman. She and her husband had lost 3 people in unrelated events over the past 3 weeks, and she was heartbroken. So I stuck around for a while, and she ended up showing me her extensive collection of Vulcan and Lord of the Rings weapons, Shakespeare translated into Vulcan, giant figures of Lord of the Rings characters, and so forth. Then at another place, I met a charming woman, but there was an intense musky smell. Turned out much of the furniture had holes carved out for her ferrets to get in and out of drawers and such. Both super nice people, though. Next story. My sister worked as a home health nurse in rural Midwest USA. She said that they would see lots of infants who were not thriving. They would chart them as failure to thrive because they weren't sick, just underweight and small. They were in homes that would have been receiving food assistance. She noticed that when the children got big enough to get themselves up to the table or reach the top of the table while standing, they would start growing normally. In other words, no one was actually feeding the little ones enough. Next story. Nobody will read this comment, so I don't feel bad about violating the prompt. I'm not in one of those categories. But I have a friend who is a working professional in a demanding field and extremely put together. She is always dressed to the nines, but appropriate to the situation, never overdone or ostentatious. Makeup on point, hair blown out. She's beautiful, like double take on the street beautiful, though she's a bit on the short side, so maybe easy to miss. But as far as I'm aware, she is competent and respected at work, among her peers and in her field. Briefs always in order and in time. She works out, so she's rather fit. She has an active social lifestyle and is involved in numerous time-intensive activities. She's incredibly type A, everything is diligently planned and orderly, and she's ambitious and goal-oriented. All in all, you'd look at her and think she is well-adjusted, and she has her crap together. So I dropped into her apartment a little while back. It was sort of short notice, like a few days, and I know her schedule is packed, so it wasn't the piles of unfolded, maybe clean, maybe dirty laundry that got to me. I've fallen behind on laundry countless of times. And it wasn't the tumbleweeds of cat hair like the place had never been vacuumed. Again, I have cats and kids. Vacuuming, it takes a back seat sometimes. And it wasn't the piles and piles of unopened mail on every counter, table, and surface. It was walking into her bathroom and seeing mold all over the ceiling and on every wall. The entire bathroom looked like cookies and cream ice cream. I was gagging. At that point, it wasn't a matter of cleanliness for cleanliness' sake, but for physical health. I have no idea how she wasn't chronically ill. I can only explain it as she's basically never home. She is often taking her strictly indoor cats to the vet, and I wonder if the mold is why they're always sick. But it could just be undiagnosed, untreated ADHD. Her work and hobbies may be hyperfixations, and that's how she keeps going. Cleaning just might be low priority. It could be so simple. But the thing I can't get off my mind is about a decade ago, she suffered a sudden, enormous, incomparable loss. And then shortly after, another. And sometime later, one more just for FU's sake. She puts on a brave face like she is okay. She's moved on. She is healed. She is successful by just about every metric. But seeing the conditions she lives in, it seems like she's severely depressed. We talk about functional alcoholics who hide their addiction and get by despite it, but we don't talk about functional depressives, people who are silently suffering and falling apart but still go through all of the motions and distractions to play act happiness when they are truly in pain. Of course, messiness doesn't necessarily indicate depression. I don't project that on everybody. It's her specific situation that makes me wonder if she's okay, and I never would have suspected anything if I hadn't seen her bathroom. Next story. I was selling a much distressed 2-bed, 1-bath upstairs unit condo. The owner had 6 people, 2 dogs, and a cat in there. Trash and filth everywhere. Didn't clean up after the pets. Smoked. The owner had an adult son, mentally handicapped, who peed in bottles and left them around the unit that they did not clean up. One of the owners had cancer and was in hospice in there. It was just awful. So I was showing the property to prospective buyers, and the owner of the downstairs unit pulled me aside to ask if I was buying. And when I said yes, he secretly asked me to meet him at the other side of the building as he wanted to show me something. Well, we went into his unit and he showed me that flies, gnats infested his unit due to the filth above him, and he had to have gnat traps in all of his outlets to combat the bugs who found their way through the ceiling. And he was warning me. Then, one of the prospective buyers was a husband and wife and their contractor. They walked in the condo for about 5 seconds before the contractor ran out of the unit and started dry heaving over the railing of the walkway up the balcony. Needless to say, they didn't buy the condo, although I was eventually able to sell it. Next story. We used to move a lot with my husband's job. The only way for us to build equity in a house was to buy a fixer-upper, so we looked at a lot of old and half-finished homes for sale over the years. 2 stand out in my memory for very different reasons. One was decorated in some kind of French brothel style, red walls, draperies, and carpets, ornate gold ornaments, red brocade Victorian furniture, very suggestive amateur art. The owner was a very prim older lady in pearls and a cardigan. The second was a beautiful estate home in a lovely old waterfront neighborhood. 2 sisters who hated each other. They lived there, constantly doing things to make the other one angry. One took a sledgehammer to the kitchen walls. The other set up the elegant paneled dining room as an aviary. Screens over the doors, tree in the middle of the room, bird feces everywhere, 2 and 3 inches thick on floor, walls, mantle, curtains. Can you say histoplasmosis? Both women were in the hospital. Next story. I once conducted interviews almost daily all over the Los Angeles metro area, which meant I walked into homes and business places of all sorts. You can imagine the range of disparity in that area. But what stood out to me most was the thought and design put into higher dollar properties. Materials, views, the concept and flow of life in a house all occurs at a higher level than most people are ever really consciously exposed to. Also, there's silence. With a lack of space comes a lack of personal space, privacy. I might enter one home where there are dozens of places to sit and conduct an interview, then another where there is almost no way for a person to step away from their children, their grandmother, their dog, the construction outside, the other children entertained by the TV, a cacophony, and a little personal refugee from it. There are profound consequences to such things, and we all deserve better. Next story. People are really not understanding the assignment here. OP specifically asked about things the owner does not realize they are revealing. obviously looking for things a normal, everyday house might have. Like, the floors were clean but the couch was covered in fur, so that reveals that they typically live in a dirty house, but they swept because they knew I was coming. But removing fur from a couch is far too time-consuming for a quick fix, so the signs were there. Or maybe the basket they put their mail in by the front door was packed to the gills, which tells me they never check their mail and likely won't be prompt about paying me. And so on and so forth. People who have other people chained to the wall in their basement or who have piss, crap, and trash all over their house are quite aware they are a problem. This is obviously not what OP was asking. So I don't understand why all of these very extreme stories that are totally off base are being updated to the top of the thread. The one with the litter box on the kitchen counter is on the fence because most civilized people clearly know that's a disgusting thing to do, but cat people so often tend to be totally clueless about the social acceptability of their behavior, so I do buy that they may be unaware of how that comes off. So, is OP a little pretentious? Yes. Is OP kinda right? Yeah. Do I care? Not really. I've been entertained so far and more horrified in some ways, and the way OP deduces in the first third of that story is the way Sean Spencer deduces clues in the TV show Psych. You know that's right. Y'all heard about Pluto? That's messed up. Next story. So, I fix appliances for a living. The cleanest house I've ever been in, where everything was perfect and looked like a Norman Rockwell painting, was the only lady who ever stiffed the bill. Most houses are messy, but you sort of expect it because people have lives and they're busy with those lives, and other houses are filthy, and those people are just totally fine living in absolute filth. There are way more people with mental illness out there than anyone knows just from looking at the front of a house. It is also very easy to tell a house from a home, where people live there but don't really care or feel safe, versus a dwelling where someone has made it their own and looks forward to being there both with and without family. Also, the number of parents that are totally cool with their kids opening the door to a total stranger blows my mind. It's weird though, because it's less what the condition of the house tells me and more about how the people act. Rich people generally fall into two categories: the guy who is rich but down to earth and treats you like a buddy and is happy to have you there, and the a-hole who thinks he's better than everyone and shows off his wealth and treats you like the dirt on his shoe. Then middle income is a mix of people who treat you like they understand you're doing a job to make a living just like them, or they're too busy to deal with you and barely tolerate you while you're there. Lower income people tend to be the nicest, and it's a weird mix of welcoming and caring, but also trepidation knowing you'll have to charge them at the end of your visit. Granted, this doesn't apply to everyone, but it's a generalization of what I've seen. I understand other people might have very different opinions or takes on this. Next story. I installed utility meters where most of the work was outside. Some people would insist I go through their house to get in the backyard. This is in Texas where privacy fences are a must. This one homeowner was very insistent that I go through his house, but the clutter was so bad. Bird cages, boxes, just junk everywhere. Then I see a bunch of these torso mannequins used for tailoring, and all I could hear was the song "Goodbye Horses" in my head. I told him, sorry, but I'm not allowed in homes. I need to go through the gate. Next story. I used to sell medical equipment for people's homes, which meant a lot of visits to their home to arrange installation, etc. The amount of people who live in homes absolutely infested with black mold in this country, the UK, is very worrying. Sir, the entire corner of your bedroom is black with mold and it smells very damp in here. I think you need to get that sorted out. Oh, it's fine. It's just black mold, it is. Okay. And what was your diagnosis again? Oh, it's COPD. Yeah, right. Next story. Fox News. I've noted this several times to my friends and family, but when I go into someone's home that watches Fox News, it is on every television in the house, even the unoccupied rooms. It's like they cannot miss even a moment of the commentary as they traverse the house from the bathroom to the kitchen and from the lanai to the bedrooms. Fox News. And it seriously is worth noting. I've been in a lot of homes as a tradesman, and this phenomenon has proven true at least a dozen times amongst the Fox News crowd. All other sane people usually only have the television they are watched turned on, not every TV in the house. Next story. Too many comments to get spotted and too many gross stories for this one to be interesting, but if it's a family house with young kids and it's pristine, not just tidy and everything's in its place, but no toys to show, no jackets around, no shoes out near the door, no toys out, not even any toy storage on display, that rings more sirens than a messy but clean house. When there's lots of pictures up and the same person's in every picture, albeit with other people. Next story. Homeowners with yippy-ass dogs who don't put them away when you know I am coming over and need to have a conversation. I'm not going to scream over your dog's barking. I've also been bit about a dozen times. Both could be solved by locking up your pets for the duration of the visit. Then hoarders are both rich and poor. I've seen tens of thousands of dollars of stuff still in its packaging, lining hallways and bedrooms in homes worth millions in gated communities. So much stuff, you can't even work in the house. Then I can smell that crazy cat lady the second I get out of the truck. The amount of people who let their pets piss and crap all over the place and don't clean up. I'm talking crap that is months old and smashed into the carpet. Then I can smell your pot growing. Then very few people prep the area I need to work in. I have to move too many beds, furniture, and people stuff in an area that they know I need to work in. Please be considerate. I don't want to move your crap and potentially break it and get blamed. Then there's ultra-religious households kids who are always paralyzed with fear. It's weird seeing kids in that state. Their rooms are usually packed with figurines and statues of Jesus. And mega-church pastors are among the richest clients I do work for. Their level of wealth is obscene. Next story. People often overrate their level of cleanliness. I know a couple who said they weren't messy and filthy and couldn't understand why the boyfriend suddenly had allergic reactions to dust. Turns out they never changed or washed their pillowcase or threw away their pillowcases. Also knew a family who got sick so often that they had to cancel our appointment. They said they only bathed their toddler once a week and changed the clothes every 3 days. The kid went to daycare 5 days a week. Next story. Surveyor here. Once doing checks on the home for an elderly lady, mid-70s, she seemed reluctant to let me in the back bedroom but just made me promise not to go into the wardrobe, which I honored. I didn't think much of it but did spot that there were 2 domestic smoke alarm type devices in the back bedroom. This was odd as there was one in most other rooms. One brand I recognized and was clearly just self-fixed, but the other was some sort of generic fascia and wasn't even marked as a heat smoke monoxide detector. Curiosity got the better of me, so I slipped off my shoes, climbed onto the bed, and spun the head cover off to reveal a deep sunk eyelet into the ceiling. So I'm stood there, contemplating what the F this is, when her sweet but slightly embarrassed voice came in from the landing. "I'm so sorry. Now you know what I was hiding in the wardrobe." It was an anchor point for a sex swing. Fair play to you, Doreen. Next story. I used to do pest control. Worst decision of my life. I don't care how well it paid or how chill my friend's dad was who owned the company. And one time, I went into this house. Looked normal from the outside. Inside was all trash. Just trash. Like an outside dump. The bathroom was floor to ceiling with trash. Actual trash, not just junk. Like, instead of taking the trash out, they stacked it. There was dog poop all over the house, just all over. It was like the worst outside of a house you've ever seen was inside. Then there were roaches everywhere. Like, they removed a table leaf and it looked like World War Z. Swarms of roaches just started pouring out like moving liquid. Then at some point, one of the 15 adults in the house said sternly, "Hey kid, be careful what you spray." "Oh, I'm sorry. Are you worried about your piles of used paper towels and McDonald's wrappers and dog poop are going to be contaminated by my bug spray?" And then at some point, roaches started falling from the ceiling because why not? I called my boss and said, "I don't care how much you pay me. I'm not going back to that house." He yelled at me and I said, "Absolutely not. Fire me." The next day he goes to finish the job and he calls me and says, "I'm so sorry." Next story. I was a paramedic, so I got to see people's homes in a way that wasn't dressed up for visitors. I have plenty of horror stories, obviously, but one thing that I haven't seen mentioned much is that there is such thing as a too clean house. When I go into someone's home, I expect it to look a little lived in. Notes by the phone, dishes in the sink, blankets on the couch, things that look like normal things. When a place is so clean that it almost feels sterile, sometimes it's just the way they are, but sometimes it points to an underlying stressor, like working too much or OCD. I'd still take this over piss carpets, but it's uninviting in its own way. Also, there's a difference between just messy and actual dirty, and you can usually tell. Next story. I helped clean houses 2 years ago just for one season. I've noticed houses with less family photos are more colder and dreary than homes with photos of family everywhere. The homes with more photos felt more lively and warm. One home belonged to a very proud great-grandmother. She had picture frames everywhere of her family, and she was so kind and full of energy. One appointment we had to call her phone because she couldn't hear us ringing her doorbell and knocking on the door because she was playing James Brown in the house on the highest volume. Well, guys, first off, that grandma is adorable, and also shout out to Doreen from a few stories ago. If you want to get sex swingy at the age of 70, why not? Just don't break a hip. But anyway, I was thoroughly entertained and disgusted, as I mentioned earlier, and I hope you were too. I'm glad we could share this experience and this slight trauma together. Also, watch your step when you step into somebody's home. But anyway, guys, we are at the end of the video. Hopefully you don't live like this. If you do, we need to have a talk. But thank you all so much for watching, commenting. Have a really good day, and bye-bye.